In this video, we're going to talk about business meetings, how to have better professional meetings. You're going to learn specifically three things. Number one, the importance of knowing exactly what type of meeting you're going to have and how to prepare for that meeting. Number two, the importance of preparation, how important it is to spend the right amount of time for the right meetings to make sure that these types of meetings are successful and effective for everybody involved. And lastly, a few specific tactics, like think about agenda items, meeting description, etc., to make your meetings stand out and having effective meetings. My name is Felix Haller. I'm a former manager at Bain Company, where I spent several years jumping from project to project, having a lot of different types of projects, and I've learned the importance of effective meeting facilitation, whether it be small meetings, one-on-ones with your peers, with your supervisor, but then also the important SteerCo project updates with senior clients where things have to be well thought out, well prepared meeting slides, etc., to make sure that these meetings are successful. I want to start with the first point, how important it is to know exactly what type of meeting you're having and how much preparation to put into the meeting. There's a lot of advice out there saying you always need an agenda, you always need to be clear on the objectives for the meeting. And while that makes sense, in reality, you might have 10 meetings a day, you might have 20, 30 meetings a week, where not every meeting is super important. And a meeting can be even having lunch with somebody, right? Like a 30-minute meeting lunch or a check-in over the phone. All of these interactions and theoretically are meetings. And in my philosophy, all of these types of meetings are not the same in terms of importance. Think of it on a spectrum from very casual, informal, not super important meetings to very important, very formal, very professional, well-prepared meetings. So on the one side, you have daily check-ins, coffee chats, things that are more frequent, less critical, they're not as important. And then on the other side, you have the very important meetings, like once a month update to a very senior person, meetings where there will be important decisions being made, where people have pre-meetings for the meeting and pre-meetings for the pre-meeting, getting input from everybody, making sure that the slides, the materials for the meeting are aligned and correct. And so you need to think of like the 20, 30 meetings that you have throughout the week and where along the spectrum do they fall. And you obviously don't want to over prepare and spend a lot of time for these daily meetings, lower importance meetings. But then you want to spend a lot of time preparing for the really important meetings and make sure that they're successful. And now we're coming to point number two, preparation. I strongly believe the really important meetings and the successful meetings are the ones where you need to spend a lot of time preparing. So let's say you have an important meeting at the end of the day, late afternoon. You want to spend the 2-3 hours to prepare for that meeting. You don't want to spend 2-3 hours preparing for the daily check-in if you have one every day or if you have a coffee chat. And there is almost a level of structure and professionalism that is required for some meetings while it isn't for some others. You don't have to be over-prepared and over-structured for the casual meetings. So as an example, if you have a coffee chat, yes, you can think of a couple questions, topics you want to discuss, but you don't need to be super structured and have a clear agenda for these informal meetings. Some meetings intentionally should be informal, unstructured, to allow for sharing some more casual themes and topics to build a connection, as opposed to some more formal, clearly tactical meetings. So the takeaway is being clear on how important is the meeting and how much preparation is really required for that meeting. And that becomes more and more important as you become more senior, have more involvement, and you get invited to more meetings. You won't be able to prepare for every meeting. For some meetings, it's fine to prepare for 5 minutes, 10 minutes beforehand, thinking about the topic, what could be key questions, key decisions you want to make in there. And then the more important ones, you want to carve out specific time, create presentations, materials, think about the specific agenda items, etc. Next, I want to talk about a couple specific tactics that you can do, and I think that are really important for the more structured, formal, important meetings. Like I said, maybe not for your next coffee chat, but if you have a project update to a bunch of senior stakeholders, you want to make sure that you follow a couple of these steps. And they might be quite obvious, but I've noticed myself that even though we know we should be doing it, a lot of people, and even myself, don't actually follow it and do it on a day-to-day basis. The first one is clarifying the meeting objective. So number one, actually taking the time, thinking about what am I trying to achieve in the meeting, and then putting it in the meeting description or in the meeting title. So a lot of meetings just say update or check-in. This obviously doesn't tell you anything about what the objective of the meeting is. A tad better would be a topic title, where you at least know what the topic is or the theme. For instance, let's say there's a project, an integration project that's called SWOT 2.0 check-in. This way, at least you know it's about this project. Or sales effectiveness survey. So you know it's about this survey that we potentially conducted or are thinking about launching. So this is a tad better. I would say the next level is to specify what you're trying to achieve in the meeting about that topic. So for instance, if you're talking about a survey, the meeting title could be, or the objective could be, align on survey timeline. That way it's clear for meeting participants, but also for you, what the end goal is of the meeting. To achieve a successful meeting, you want to make sure that everybody's aligned on the timeline. I mean, that's really powerful. And if you think about it, how many meetings are really that specific? Not a lot. I would say 5 to 10% of meetings are even that clear. So that's number one, being very specific about that. What's the one key objective that you want to achieve in the meeting? And one I think really good tactic is to always start with a verb. So it's clear, like, what is the activity we're doing in the meeting? Are we aligning on something? Are we discussing something? Are we deciding something? So let's say it's about decide, survey, launch, date. So then it's clear that the objective is to decide on this specific date. And so you can clearly say, okay, well, did we achieve it or not achieve it? The next topic, or the next tactic, is to specify how you structure the meeting. What are the different agenda items of the meeting? And if it's only a 15, 30-minute meeting, it might just be one agenda item, right? But it could still be helpful, even for shorter meetings, to be clear of how you intend to structure the meeting. For instance, you could say, present current survey timeline, and then discuss alternative options. Let's say you have a suggested timeline and then an alternative option, and then decide on launch date. So these could be the 3 agenda items, activities in the meeting, and going through them would help you achieve your overall objective of deciding on a launch date. And there are a couple additional hacks or tactics I think that are helpful to make it even more effective is adding here maybe who will actually present it. Let's say Tim is presenting this one, and here deciding John might have the final decision-making power, and this could be Sarah. Obviously, in this case, probably one person would do all of it, so it doesn't make so much sense in such a short meeting. But let's say it's a executive update meeting where 3 different types of topics are being discussed. So then I think it might be really helpful to have a person, a name on it, who is the owner of that activity. And then you could, let's say this is a 90-minute meeting. You could even put in some timelines and some like 30 minutes for this, or maybe 50 minutes for the current one. Then discussions usually take a little longer, 30 minutes. And then you do 30 minutes of deciding on it. I guess there's like 15 minutes left, but things always take a little longer from time to time. So I think this is good. I think this is really powerful, right? This way, as a participant, but also as the one facilitating, you have already thought about what are you really trying to achieve? How are you trying to achieve it? Like, what are the different steps, the different agenda items? That's really, really helpful. Another thing that's helpful to put in the meeting description is to mention whether there's any preparation needed from the participants. So you could say, please review the attached meeting materials in advance of the meeting. And in this case, you would attach or distribute the meeting materials in advance of the meeting. And it could be like your suggested timeline. That way you might not have to present for that long. Maybe you jump into like you present only for 5 minutes very quickly because you can assume that people have read it. Typically, even if you do this, you still want to provide a little bit of an overview because you can assume that in the real world, usually some people wouldn't have prepared, wouldn't have had the time to read it. So it's always good to give them some, like, make sure everybody is aligned on where we are, like the status quo and the situation of the meeting, the context. So these are a few of the, I would say, very tactical things that you want to make sure you have in place for the more important meetings. I know this is super basic and probably most people know that they should be doing this. But I think it's really important to, from time to time, stepping back and thinking about, am I actually doing this? I know I should be doing it, but am I actually doing it? And incorporating it in your day-to-day meeting facilitation and meeting organization. Now we talked a little bit about the meeting invite. Let me end with a few tactics in the meeting. Number 1, always start and end on time. Always start with a little bit of context before you jump into the agenda items. Spend the first 2-3 minutes introducing the topic, providing a little bit of context around why are we here, what you've done in the past around this topic, like in the survey example. Provide a little bit of context around there was a decision made, we're going to launch a survey, what's the purpose of the survey? You've prepared a timeline, and the purpose of this meeting is X, Y, and Z. Meaning to align on the timeline. That way everybody's aligned before you jump into into the presentation and then into the discussion and decision making. And then before the end of the meeting, stepping back quickly and aligning on next steps. That's really important, especially when you didn't get to everything. Let's say you haven't made a decision, you can wrap it up by saying, okay, we've had a good discussion. Thanks for participating. I'm going to schedule another meeting to make the final decision, or we're going to decide on it offline. So that way you have a really nice meeting end, and everybody feels like we've accomplished something, we've discussed something, we've presented something, and we have clear next steps. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.